Okay, so now I have the new interface up here. As I mentioned earlier, the three pillars for any security program. The first pillar always is a very solid asset inventory, because if you don't know what you have, you miss it in terms of monitoring it, in terms of being able to know what it's connecting to. So one of the most important things that we offer as part of the platform is a complete comprehensive global IT asset inventory, where you are discovering not just your endpoints but also non-endpoint devices, because we use a combination of different sensors to pull all of this information together in the cloud platform. And then from that point on, you are now able to see different types of devices. They are categorized, they are normalized. You can see the location of these devices. You can see the type of client hardware, different operating systems, the various models. One of the important things we discuss as part of the multi-vector is being able to know end-of-life software, end-of-life operating systems. That is very crucial as well. Being able to automatically track endpoints versus non-endpoints out of the box. Just be able to know all of your publishers. Most importantly, categorization. I mentioned the example earlier of a database. Being able to know which system is a database system, which system is a web server, out of the box without having to write multiple different queries. That's very important. And we bring that together in a single dashboard by correlating all of this information together. So there's a lot you can do additionally in terms of license management, etc. But let's focus right now on our EDR, our remote hosts, where we are running Windows. And one of the key things here you will notice is that because the Qualys agent is provided as part of the platform, and it's a free agent which does the inventory as part of the global asset inventory, one of the things you can very quickly do is make sure that it's part of the master image for your laptops, for your AMIs, for your cloud instances. So that way you can have a complete inventory at all times. So here you have 400 Windows systems, but then the question is, how do we quickly know which ones of those actually are missing activation of EDR? So you can now very quickly see there's 20 assets that have not been activated for EDR. Very quickly you can go in and just select those and execute a quick action to activate these agents for EDR. In this case, of course, you can see there's many other capabilities that we provide with that one single agent, but right now we're going to activate the EDR license, and then as soon as that is done, these agents that are connecting back to the cloud console, they will pick that up and will start providing telemetry that is needed for the EDR solution. Now let's jump to the EDR specific dashboard. So here you can see we have a new module now that as part of the platform, which is again on the same platform, but bringing all of this data in a way that it showcases the malware specific activity. So here you can see there's a bunch of assets that are infected, how many of them are being monitored, the kinds of events that are coming in, measuring those events, just being able to highlight. One of the things we're trying really hard to correlate a lot of this data so that we can provide the actionable items, right? This is something that I talk to the team all the time, and we really discuss to say, when a user logs in, how do we provide them something actionable that immediately needs their focus? And so you can see there's 5 malware found today, and that you can really track. One of the other things we do is map everything to the MITRE framework, so that way we can see all of the MITRE related TTPs. You also are able to look at all of the techniques in the last 24 hours, 7 days, 2 weeks, whatever time frame that you pick. And you can really track the various malware families and the Trojans. You can also track assets, right? One of the things that we do is that we map the assets with the asset tagging and mark those assets as high risk. So you may have malware on a bunch of devices, but then now you can really quickly go and see which of those devices really are critical assets that need to be focused on first. And then we'll take some examples here of how vulnerabilities and other things are related to EDR. And of course, we provide out of the box widgets for the common APT 10, etc. So we'll walk over those as well. But let's first start off by looking at the 5 malware that were discovered today. Clicking on that is going to give you a list of the 5 things that we have flagged as malware. And as you can see here, we provide a score. This is very crucial because you have a lot of events that are coming in. And if we don't have a way to prioritize the ones that actually, because there's different stages, right, that you go through, a malware goes through. And the idea is in a scale of 0 to 10, be able to actually highlight the ones where you have active infection going on, not just a file drop, but a process has been created, a particular network connection might have been made, etc. So we'll dive deeper. But here, this is threat intelligence that is coming from our teams, from our partners. So out of the box, we highlight the incidents where we clearly are detecting malware activity on the devices. So here, the user doesn't have to bring anything. We are doing all the work to be able to keep tab of the activity that is happening, that the agents are bringing in, and the IOCs and the IOAs are being matched in the background. Now let's take one of these, which is a trick bot, and this is more an example of a traditional garden variety malware, I would say, running out of the recycle bin. You can see all of the details. We'll go a little bit deeper into that. You can see the score, but you want to take the traditional EDR action, which is to kill the process and the network connection that is related to that, and delete the file. And now you can execute the response. The agent will pick that up and will execute that no matter where the agent is in the world, because it's connecting to the cloud platform. Next thing is interesting because here now you have a hunting use case. This may be looking for hashes or other activities that are related specifically to your organization that your threat hunting team may have found from other sources that you may want to look in, because it is something that's only attacking you. So while the system is going to identify activity that is malicious, there may be cases where organization specific hashes, etc., need to be looked at. So here's an example where the customer can bring their own threat intelligence. They can punch in the hash. You can see that the events have now narrowed down to 29 events. You can see the timeline of execution, when the process was created, file was dropped, network connection was made, etc. But you can see there are 17 files on disk that have that particular hash. So now you can click on that and you can see exactly the details of those files that are on the disk. Next, we say, well, that's fine, those are on the disk, but which of those actually have been created into a process, or a process has been executed from them. So when you click on that, that is going to narrow down exactly to the one where it is actually created into a process, which obviously is something that is more important. And then if it has made a network connection, then you can very quickly drill down and say, okay, these 3 actually have created network connections. So you can drill into one of those. And here we could see a lot of information about the arguments, the name of the executable, logged in user, who was the parent process. You can see the process tree, which I'll show you in a minute. But in this case, now you can quickly take a response action for something which is very specific to your organization. So this way we bring our own threat intelligence from our partners. If you have a partner that is providing you managed services, they can bring their intelligence, or you can bring your intelligence, and then after that, you can really take response actions directly into the product. So this is where you can come in, put your comments, execute the response, and now that particular network connection and the file will be deleted, etc. So now we are down one malware. Here I want to take an example of something that's a little bit more complex, where we are actively tracking the life cycle based on the MITRE attack framework. And let's pick credential access, right? What systems are in a state where credential access is being attempted and that has been flagged. So in this case, let's drill down specifically into OS credential dumping. So there's these 2 processes that were detected, which were attempting to do OS credential dumping. Let's go into this first one. So now here you can see a lot of information related to the asset as well as to the specific process. But what is interesting now here is that you can drill down into a very in-depth graph, which is the process tree that shows exactly that the parent was Firefox. So it looks like this thing somehow was a drive-by download that Firefox was able to download this executable, maybe it's because of some user action. You can see immediately that the first thing was a network connection was established. I assume that, and we can drill down more in depth, but you can see that from there, probably something was downloaded and then 2 processes were executed. We can see that yhost didn't actually create a network connection. So if you click on it, you will see that it's a Mimikatz tool that basically is very commonly used for dumping. And this was actually blocked by the anti-malware capability of the agent, which is the more traditional antivirus. And so that antivirus, anti-malware really is only focusing on a particular known hash or a known signature, because now you know it's a Mimikatz tool. We're able to click on it and it's blocked, but it's not able to go back and actually look at all of this data. But the EDR capability as part of the platform is able to be sort of this DVR in the cloud that's collecting all of the data that is coming in, and actually able to go through all of that to now investigate a little bit more to say, we have a process that was blocked, what other things did they do? So now here you can see that the second process that was executed was xmrig.exe, and then that created a network connection, and that network connection was actually to a miner site where mining is done. So now we kind of have a much better context about what is going on. So obviously the first thing you want to do is maybe do some additional investigation if needed. So you can go to virus total, etc., to compare what you're seeing. But the most important thing is going to be, let's kill the process and the network connection associated with it, and then let's quarantine the file so we can use it for investigation later. You can delete the file. There's a few actions that you can do here. So now the response is executed, and that particular process is gone. Now we start to see the other additional vectors that help us understand what else is going on, what may have happened on the system, and how do these things tie with each other, and especially from a response perspective. So now when I click on the asset, you're going to see an extremely rich set of information about that asset, all put together in a single place. So the analyst does not have to go to 15 different consoles, 15 different locations to try to get more and more information. So any of you who are analysts who are looking at breach investigation, etc., you have to go to many different tools or use SIM solutions to try to pull a lot of this information together. Because of the Qualys agent and the Qualys platform already providing a lot of these capabilities, this is that 38 plus million agents that we talked about that are already collecting this data. You can get very in-depth information, everything from system information, network information. Install software is very interesting because we talked about Firefox earlier, and you can see the Firefox here is end of life. So that's a quick way to add another data point to say, obviously the Firefox is end of life, and that was leveraged to compromise. More interestingly, now you start to see that non-agent information is also being correlated with that endpoint. So traffic summary is being collected from the passive sensor, which actually is a little device that we provide, which is a virtual device or can be a physical device that sits on the network tap port, and it is analyzing traffic. It's used for multiple things, including device discovery, etc. But more importantly, here you can see that around that time frame when that xmrig.exe was executed, there was a big spike in ingress traffic. So obviously the miner, and then you can see here the service family and the app service, the miner actually is downloading a lot of data, which it's using the system to do the mining. So here's another additional data point that is collected here. And then from there on, you can obviously go into investigating a little bit more on the various sessions that it has established, how long the sessions were, how much data was downloaded, etc. Now you can go on to the vulnerabilities. This is the bringing the traditional quick view of saying, well, yes, I saw some activity, but now let me investigate to say what are the vulnerabilities on this particular device. So here you can quickly go in, pick up the vulnerabilities. You can see that malicious code execution through command line parameters is a vulnerability that has not been patched. You can obviously do the patch management here, which we talked about earlier, which is another vector from a response perspective to be able to use the same system, same tool for deploying the patches as well. You can look at the configuration. So here another data point is to say, based on the CIS benchmark, it's highly recommended that you make sure that this parameter is set to block credential steering for Windows systems. And obviously on this particular system, the posture of this is marked as fail. So that setting has not been enabled. So here is another data point that basically shows you that there's settings that could have prevented potentially something bad happening were not actually in place. So there's many other things, including file integrity, etc. But now you come back to the particular event and the system, and now you want to say you have enough information that you have collected just to see what's going on. So maybe you still want to make sure that you quarantine the host, right? Because you can really never trust a system again that actually has shown activity of compromise. As we discussed earlier, nobody's really ever going to put that system back into production without actually completely re-imaging it multiple times probably. So when you go to quarantine the host, of course, you want to have a whitelist so that this host can still connect to certain management systems, etc., so that the host can still be managed and you can get in there and do some additional investigation. But now we quarantine the host so that the agent enforces the quarantine, and that takes care of that issue. Now here it really starts to get very interesting, because traditional EDR response would have ended by quarantine the file or host or kill the process. But because of Qualys bringing in VMDR, EDR, a lot of that capability together in a single platform with a single agent, you can really start to look at your exploitability risk here, right? Which is what exploitable vulnerabilities were associated with this particular attack. And you can really see, as well as the misconfigurations that are associated with it. So now you can see here that I can click on those misconfigurations, and the power of the platform is that you can do a very simple action to say, make sure that block credential stealing from Windows control is actually enabled, and the audit logging for lsas.exe is actually set at the right level. So on all the rest of the hosts that don't have that, all the hosts, rest of the systems in your entire environment, that particular configuration is not set, you can now see that there are 57 of those. You can click on that and you can basically create a remediation job where it leverages the same agent to now create the ability to fix those controls. And this is not where the user has to go and write all of these things. These are packages that we push out, so we know exactly how to set what parameter, create that particular job, and you execute that job. It'll quickly pick up as the agents connect back to the platform. They will pick up that job and execute, and now you will have those 57 systems pretty quickly actually actually fixing that particular control and protecting yourself. Additionally, you want to ensure that you also patch, identify that vulnerability. So now you can go here and focus on the CVE and say go to VMDR. So this is linked together. So now you can see there are 25, so there are basically 25 sort of threat vectors that you can see here that are associated with malware, and you have about 2.4K hosts and 9,000 vulnerabilities, etc. VMDR is going to prioritize all of that to show that for you to be able to patch various systems for this particular CVE is extremely easy. We prioritize that, patches are available, but there is still prioritization that is required, because maybe you cannot patch all of these systems quickly. So you want to figure out further ways to prioritize. And again, the rich telemetry that we bring from an enrichment perspective here is really the key thing, because now when you go in here, you can add additional filtering capabilities, like saying, not only am I looking for something that has that particular CVE checked, but if it is related to the Firefox browser, and if the software last use date is less than 30 days, that's the highest critical systems for me, right? Because we're bringing information about the last use date of a software, as in not just looking at the specific telemetry at the time of the attack. We can say that the devices that have that particular CVE, but the software has actually not been actively used in the last 6 months are lower priority because this particular user is not an active Firefox user. So now the 306 hosts that we had looked at is actually now going to go down and 203, and now we can execute a patch job right there. So you could see from detecting the particular malware and what it did and what it leveraged to being able to investigate a little bit more on that host and get more information from the network to being able to create a patch job was only 3 to 4 clicks away. So now you're able to create a quick patch job where that particular patch is going to be installed on those 103 hosts, and this is going to help you very quickly protect. And this is the multi-vector response that we talked about, where it is not just about killing that one particular system or that one particular process, but this is really about being able to take a much more expansive response action, so you can really protect, and the prevention part can be done. Now, additional vectors that we bring in, which I think are very crucial here, which other EDR solutions today really in the market don't provide, is EDR tends to only focus on endpoints that actually have agents. But because of the Qualys platform, where we do a lot of active scanning, authenticated scanning of a lot of other devices that are not endpoints, and with the passive scanning, we can see which hosts are making connections on a regular basis to which other systems and what are the potential vulnerabilities. So that particular host we could see has been connecting to this particular printer, and that printer has been marked as red because now if you click on the printer, you will see that this old HP LaserJet printer has 9 exploitable vulnerabilities because these kind of devices tend not to get patched. But what that means is that this is ripe for lateral movement. So a lot of EDR systems that focus only on the endpoint cannot really know what that system is because it's not another endpoint which has an agent. So they tend to miss that. But lateral movement is not only from endpoint to endpoint. Attackers can leverage other vulnerabilities in the environment to be able to do that. So here you can have that printer. But what's also interesting is the attack path. So how crucial is this host and finding that on the network, because you can see that printer is also being connected to by through a SharePoint or through a source a server through a SharePoint or through a source code repository. This is very, very critical, right? I mean, this is actually pretty bad because you now actually have a potential that a VM image that you have been using to dump some of your source code, actually somebody is leveraging that to be able to connect to the printer, because we have seen those connections happen for whatever reason. So now you're actually able to expand the scope of this investigation pretty quickly, but you can do that directly on the Qualys platform, because with the ability to use mapping and passive scanning, we can actually find out what is accessible from which particular device. And so that really provides a very different aspect from threat hunting. Again, the power of the platform is the unified approach. We talked about the bringing the unifying power of the Qualys platform to EDR. So here you can see the unified dashboard, which actually brings your VMDR focus, which is your prevention. Try to do everything to prevent the attack from happening in the first place. You can see your malware related events are on the same dashboard. You can see your MITRE attack stages. What's interesting is that these are not just based on endpoint telemetry, right? With additional sensors that we have in place, maybe the context of the fact that that particular thing is in the cloud, or maybe it's an endpoint, or maybe it's in a remote office. We can see all of that and bring it together. And as you can see, you can really configure these dashboards to be extremely detailed, and more importantly, bring many different types of information that is related to each other, but traditionally considered as different tools together in a single view, because now you have your misconfigurations, your vulnerabilities, your asset inventory. We talked a little bit about end of life, etc. earlier, but you can also start to bring everything that is related to your cloud, maybe your web servers, your assets that have critical data. You can bring in things that are missing patches where the remediation may have failed. maybe where you have public instances of EC2, etc. So in this case, you're also bringing in the same dashboard if this particular data center of this particular entity or this particular application have things that are hosted in the cloud. Now you can really see those in a single place as well, and you can not, it's not only about the instances that are running in the cloud, but also your S3 buckets, your public instances, etc. And so that really creates a very unique capability where you are seeing the overall picture of your security posture together in a single view, in a single dashboard, in a single pane of glass. And at the bottom here, you also have some container related things. But again, the idea and the goal here, as I mentioned earlier, and this will flow into the next conversation that we are going to have around XDR and expanding the platform for security analytics beyond endpoints. But really, this is where we are extremely excited. Let me get my slide deck back up. All right, so okay, good. I hope you enjoyed that brief demo. I know there's a lot to cover, and I couldn't cover everything, but hopefully gave you a quick preview of what we're talking about in terms of the concept of multi-vector EDR and the capabilities of the EDR solution. And in the demo, as I mentioned, I was able to cover a few of those vectors, and there's quite a few more. Here's I've listed a few of them, and we'll continue to add even more to really bring that enrichment that you need for bringing the other vectors that define a really comprehensive EDR together. So all of that in a single app that is cloud-based with simplified workflows. Again, prevention, detection, asset inventory, all part of the same solution. Same sides of the different sides of the same coin. Today we are already in a beta, and we're going to go GA towards the end of Q3. So we're quite excited about that. So please do sign up at qualys.com/EDR.